So this was my 32nd and last day out in North Carolina. I originally planned to come out and just work for 3 days, no matter what. And I put it into the universe's hands that it would be all right. I left town with $430, and when I got to Swanoa, I had absolutely $0 in my pocket, and I just was able to stretch it out. And between the camp being so generous and providing food and being able to fuel my truck up because I was working it, I just was able to stay an entire 32 days. And I had lots of people that helped make that journey a reality and contributed. And it was a great effort by a lot of people. And I really appreciate everybody involved that made me able to stay out here this long. You guys are all just wonderful, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all. But for this day, I started out, I hauled gravel out to Kim. She was needing some gravel out there for her hill. She didn't want to be slipping and sliding up and down her hill. So I went to the gravel yard and the dump truck and got to drive the dump truck for one more day. And they fixed the brakes on that thing. They had a mechanic fix the brakes, and that thing is running top notch. Great shape. I love that dump truck. It's a great truck, and it was a really handy deal for me to be able to use and go out there and help people. I ran a lot of loads in that thing, and it's doing really good now. So I went and I dropped a load of gravel off at her house, and from there I came back to camp, and I needed to change the oil on my truck. My oil was scorched from the first time I came out. I overheated my truck way bad, and I knew the viscosity of my oil was non-existent. So I knew I needed to change my oil. So I changed my oil and finished packing up, gave away a couple more books, and did one more interview with Mike, and got on the road. People had told me coming down when I got there that there was a really terrible route through the mountains, and they were all like, "Josh, did you take the hard route?" And I was like, "No, I came down where my GPS guided me. I just came down 81, and it was real nice and smooth, real easy. It was great." And they were like, "Wow, you're lucky because those mountain roads were hard." And I was like, "Oh, and I didn't think much of it." So leaving, I just followed my GPS and just assumed it was taking me down the same route and wasn't paying attention at all whatsoever. And I drive and I drive and I drive, and I get about an hour into it, and then I realize it is taking me off the interstate. And I'm like, "Oh no, why is it taking me off the interstate?" And I look and I realize that it wasn't taking me down 81, that it was taking me through the mountain route. And I would have had to backtrack probably over an hour to go back through the other way. And I was like, "Oh no, this is bad. But I can do it. I'm not worried. I got this." So for anyone out there who might be pulling weight and might have that same mentality as I did and say, "Oh, I got this, no worries," I want to just remind everybody, anybody who's seen Billy Madison, there was a scene in Billy Madison where the kid says, "Oh, I can't wait to get to high school." And Billy Madison looks at him, Adam Sandler, he looks at him and he goes, "Don't you ever say that." And he grabs the kid by the face and he squeezes his face and he goes, "Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever say that." Well, this is what I'm going to do to anybody out there that says that they want to go through the mountains. Just imagine me grabbing your face and saying, "Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever say that," because it was bad. It was bad. I did not know what I was getting into. Once again, my arrogance bit right into me and taught me instant karma. I was like, "Oh, I got this. I'll go over the mountains. I can drive anything." Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're driving when it's a straight up and down hill, up and down and 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 up and down. It is going to just destroy your equipment and everything you have. I was about 7 miles into it when I realized it was a terrible decision, and I thought about turning around, but I realized that turning around would have been hard, and I would have had to go through all that stuff I just went through. And it was insane going through what I just went through in just like 7 miles. And I looked at my GPS and it said I had another 30 to go. So I just, it was a terrible feeling. So yeah, I decided to go up the mountain, and I'm glad I changed my oil because my truck didn't overheat. It did great pulling up the mountain, but coming down, I've never had to stop and pull over to let my brakes cool down on a mountain before. And my brakes, I could smell them. They were so hot, and I was only halfway down the mountain. There was a point to where it said 8% grade, 2.5 miles, and I was about a mile and a half into it. And my brakes were smoking, and I smelt them, and they were getting soft where they weren't working, and I had no choice. I had to pull over. I was about ready to lose my brakes. And yeah, it was sketchy. I definitely would not recommend that route and would recommend going the other route. Do not do that. But it was exhilarating, and I knew that I was alive because my heart was beating really well. And it was just another one of those journeys I had. It was a fun one, boy, I'll tell you what. But the old 7.3 came through for me, and I took it slow and steady, and would get big long lines of cars behind me, and then I'd let them pass. But that trailer didn't weigh as much as it did when I came out, but it still was all of 10,000 pounds. Because I weighed it before I left without the four-wheeler and without all the tools and without that stuff, and it was 9,500 pounds. And so it had to have been over 10,000. And it's a lot going through the mountains and pulling it. That's just a lot of weight. And so for any people out there coming down from Missouri, I want to give screenshots of the route to not take. Whatever you do, take 81. And it's not just Missouri, it's anybody coming from out west going out there to the Burnsville area. Do not go through the mountains. Do not go down 81. It's a difference of like 10 minutes or 5 minutes or who knows what the GPS thinks, but I promise you, no matter what, it's not worth it. Unless you're just in a small vehicle, not pulling any weight, and you want to enjoy some beautiful scenery, then sure, go for it. But if you're pulling a trailer and have any weight at all, 10 out of 10 would not recommend. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's a dirty trick. It's a dirty, dirty trick. So that was the rest of my adventure. I drove until about 2 in the morning and pulled over on the other side of Nashville. I got from Burnsville to the other side of Nashville and pulled over and took me a nap in the camper. And that was my day for the day, and that was my final day in North Carolina.